And here we have another episode where I don't quite agree with some of the other members of the Steven Universe fandom. Almost right after this episode aired, I heard some very vocal things from people claiming that this episode was a huge letdown, that it didn't bring anything at all to the table or further anything, and that it was just a waste of time, and I completely disagree with that. I thought this episode was great. This is Storm in the Room, the latest episode of Steven Universe, and the second episode of Steven Universe's new weekly schedule that Cartoon Network still is barely advertising. It's all about how, after returning from space and hearing Connie's story, Steven and Connie spend some time together because her mom is late picking her up. Eventually, her mom does show up and we do find out why she was late. But the entire situation gets Steven thinking again about his mom. So once again, he expresses that he wishes he could do something, in this case, get to know Rose, and the room opens up for him again. Rose's room opens up for him again. He goes inside, and there she is. And she wants to do parent-child stuff with him. She wants to play sports. She wants to play video games. The kind of stuff that a child with an idealized relationship of what parents and children are and what their relationship is like would expect from a parent. She's also very supportive of him, kind of spouting out Rose-ish cliches. It felt like a very brief, a few minutes long deconstruction or parody of the idealized Rose that we got early on in the series before we started to learn about her flaws. And honestly, the entire episode could have been like that, because Steven's grievances with Rose are pretty easy to infer. It's very clear that the things that his mother has done are always on his mind, and the things that he has to do because of what his mother has done are always on his mind. We didn't need to be told that, so honestly, this episode could have ended when Steven realized that Rose wasn't really there, when he rediscovered the fact that he was essentially talking to himself. And I would have been perfectly satisfied with this episode, but then it takes it one step further and he actually confronts Rose, or this image of Rose that's there before him. And he puts those grievances that he has with her into words for the first time in the entire series, which is why no matter what anybody says, this episode did have a purpose, because up until now we could only infer what he felt. Now we know for sure. He put it into words himself. And Steven genuinely worries that Rose only turned into him, that Rose only created him to avoid the repercussions for her actions, which actually takes it a step further than what I've been inferring from all of his past contention about Rose. It takes it in the same direction as what I was inferring, but it takes it just that one step further that gives it a lot more meaning. All the way back in the extended theme song, Steven said that he wanted to live up to Rose. He wanted to be what everyone expected him to be. And the other Crystal Gems very clearly expect him to live up to Rose's legacy, so he has taken on the responsibility for everything that she's done on himself, which is incredibly unhealthy in and of itself, but on top of that, he also worries that everything his mother told him about why she brought him into existence is a lie and that she only did it to escape consequences to herself. I don't even know how this kid functions, and it's so great lately seeing him question things and bring these things up. That was one of my biggest complaints with early Steven, is that he never questioned anything and he never voiced any discontent with anything, even when he was clearly feeling it. And the episode all ends with a spectacular visual sequence where Steven is clawing his way towards Rose as a storm forms around her. And just like back in Adventures in Light Distortion, this struggle against this storm is a very tangible metaphor for his struggle to get these things out in the open, to finally address them and confront them. Because he is just talking to himself, remember. Yes, he's voicing these things to Rose, but more importantly, he's finally articulating these things and admitting them to himself. And I think a lot of people were disappointed with this episode specifically because they expected the room to be able to create a real Rose, or at least a reasonably realistic facsimile of Rose. I did too, to be perfectly honest. But frankly, I think that's an absolutely ridiculous reason to hate on this episode. First of all, because we never find out whether or not any part of Rose in this room was genuine. Someone on Tumblr, I knew your name until 2 seconds ago, I'll put it up around here somewhere. Rose was off-model through the entire episode, and I noticed at the beginning of the episode that she seemed a little off-model, and just chalked it up to differences in animation styles between storyboarders. But they pointed out that she doesn't just look off-model at the beginning, her image is actually reversed in a close-up shot, which just doesn't really happen. And that over the course of the episode, and especially at the climax of the episode, her appearance becomes more and more on model and flips back to its regular orientation, which lends credence to the theory that the Rose that Steven was talking to at the end of the episode was intended to be the room's best possible facsimile of who Rose actually was. That the Rose who reassured him that the things that she said in his video to him were true was actually Rose. We know from canon that everything that was Rose became half of Steven, that everything that she was is in him somewhere. That includes her memories and her personality. That's why I theorized a long time ago now that the room, which seems to draw upon the conscious and the subconscious desires of the person who enters it and is using it, might be able to draw those memories and personalities out and create an actual facsimile of Rose, a genuine representation of who she was as a person. And while I would have liked for the episode to have been a little bit more definitive in stating so, I really do think that that's what happened here at the end of the episode. This was so good. I'm so glad they made this episode. Until I actually saw Steven's outburst at the end, I didn't think it was actually this necessary for him to voice all those complaints. Now I can't imagine a version of this series where he didn't. And I know a lot of you are probably going to disagree with me on that, so let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.
You know, I've always felt like something was unusual about my adolescence. Maybe this is what I've been missing. Football! Ah!